Hi there and good evening. Welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Travel has been severely hampered. Over 1,000 flights were canceled at Dallas-Fort Worth International alone. And that's even forced the cancellation of Sunday's Dallas Marathon, which had 25,000 runners signed up. Thousands of power outages are reported. Driving's been treacherous, especially in Arkansas and Illinois, where hundreds of accidents have been reported. In addition to the flight cancellations, now totaling over 2,000 nationwide, there have been over twice that many flight delays across the country. Going to be talking about weather-related travel woes tonight, and what you can do, what you should do, if you encounter this situation before the end of the holiday travel season. Return guest Cathi Banks is with us tonight, Vice President of the firm LegacyTravel.com. Good to have you with us. You're based in Dallas, offices, I should say, in Dallas and Chicago. Where are you right now?
I am sitting here in Dallas County right now.
Tell me what the weather's like there.
It is very, very cold. I don't know if you remember when we had the Super Bowl down here in 2011 and how completely uncharacteristically cold it was. We missed like 5 days of school that February, and tonight's going to be the coldest night since then.
Wow. It's a tough thing, and of course it's ironic, but we tend to have some of our biggest holidays in some of the most treacherous weather times of the year. Just works out that way, I suppose, but there are a lot of things that can happen, and these days, of course, in many cases, we're dependent on others. So let's say that you're flying, and you're putting basically your plans, your hopes for the holidays in the hands of other people. Are there things that you can do beforehand to be ready?
Yes, there are a number of things. For one thing, keep an eye on the weather in the days leading up to your trip, because, for instance, in this storm, as in most storms, airlines put a plan in place to allow people that were supposed to fly today to be able to leave yesterday or reschedule for a couple of days from now. All the major airlines are allowing people to make changes to their flights, and the sooner you get on top of that, the more choice of flights you're going to have to choose from to change to. So that's one thing. Just be very heads up. And then if you find yourself having to brave the airport, or you find yourself in a situation where you're stranded, some things like make sure your cell phone is completely charged up. Have your cell phone charger with you. Just be prepared. Have cash with you, because if you find yourself at the airport and there's a big power outage, credit card machines may not work and so on and so forth. But the basic thing is plan ahead, look ahead at the weather. Just don't mindlessly go through it. Keep your head in the game.
Are the airlines, in your view, good at adjusting? I have seen times, for example, when I had to get from point A to point B, and it seemed to me that it would be easy to look at a map. I mean, we were all stuck there in the terminal watching the weather and on TV, and it seemed pretty obvious that, for example, I remember one time I couldn't get out of from Chicago into Washington, but it seemed pretty clear that I could get from Chicago to Richmond, and there I could have rented a car, and that's a couple hours drive. But I had the darndest time trying to make that happen. Are the airlines flexible, in your view, as flexible as they could be?
I think they are. I think they do generally a pretty good job. I mean, everyone's just wanting to get through their day. People are just wanting to get where they're going. And the people that work for airlines at airports, they just want you to get where you're going. They don't have a vested interest in making you upset. But they are bound by, there are only so many seats on the plane, and if there are already bodies in those seats, then there's nothing they can do about that. And in a situation like that, like here in Dallas today, 90% of the flights were canceled. So that's a pretty tough situation. Everyone's just doing the best they can.
Well, I would assume that. I take that as a given. You have to say that to yourself. People are doing the best they can. They really are doing the best that they can. The snowball effect is always interesting. Boy, once there's a problem in one place, especially if it's a Dallas or a Chicago, then it seems like even if, let's say that Chicago's backed up. If you're flying from Portland, Oregon to San Francisco, it seems like that'll eventually get you. And you look at a map and you say how, but it seems to.
Right, because airplanes get stuck in places. Like I'm looking at flightstats.com right now. They have a delay map for the United States, and the most severe delay indicator they have is red, and the whole eastern half of the United States, it seems like almost every city is red. So there's just delays everywhere, and that's going to affect places because airplanes get stuck.
Yeah. It certainly does seem to. In terms of how well the airlines are prepared for ice, I know those of us in the nation's capital area will never forget that Air Florida flight that crashed into the 14th Street Bridge, which we later found out was because of icing that formed on the wings, which took out the shape of the wing necessary to cause lift. And therefore, the plane could not grab air, as it were, and it fell out of the sky. Have those sorts of things been pretty well handled now with de-icing and this sort of thing? In other words, the technical aspect of dealing with weather. Is that pretty well taken care of?
I believe so. They have figured out. They know what needs to happen. Now, when you get in a situation like today, obviously here in Dallas, we don't have to de-ice a lot of planes. And so while we have de-icing equipment, we don't have a lot of it, compared to, say, like a Chicago or a Washington, D.C., where de-icing planes is a routine part of the day in the winter. There's lots of de-icing equipment, so it doesn't cause as many delays as it does in a situation like what we have here today in Dallas.
1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, 1-866-505-4626. We're looking at the massive flight delays around the country, and goodness knows there are a bunch of them out there, and other types of delays as well on the roads. More than 100,000 people are reported facing power outages after the storm dumped snow and ice across a big swath of the South and the Midwest. Some 32 million people, over 10% of the country's population, are expected to be affected by the winter weather. At least 5 governors have declared a state of emergency. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Is this affecting you? We'd like to hear your story. 1-866-50-JIMBO, and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Jimbo Hannon Show, 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Nasty travel conditions out there, a rotten swath of cold, icy, snowy weather. Depending on your location, it varies. It's just amazing some of the things that they're running into out there. Huge parts of the country affected by power outages and bad travel conditions. Let's say you're on the roads, Catherine Banks of LegacyTravel.com, either riding a bus or driving your car. What can you offer us in regards to that situation?
Well, for one thing, here in Texas, where we've got kind of a real bad part of the storm, the Texas Department of Transportation has asked everyone to please stay off the roads, and I have certainly heeded that advice today. Haven't left my house. But if I had an emergency that I had to leave the house, for instance, before the storm started, I did this the night before last, fill up your tank with gas because a heavier car has better traction. Another thing you might consider is put a couple of large bags of something like kitty litter in your car, so if you do get stuck, kitty litter can give you traction. Also flares, bringing flares, again, back to making sure your cell phone is charged up. But the biggest thing is if you can stay off the road, then do. Those
are all awfully good tips. Something that I've been told it can be a problem. Let's say you actually get stuck in the snow and you may have to overnight it. I have heard that if you, in fact, sit in your car and you say, well, at least I got plenty of gas, might as well leave the motor running, that you'd better be darn sure that exhaust has some place to go. Yeah, that's exactly right. As a matter of fact, my best friend, I was raised in Alaska, and my best friend in high school, her brother died because they got stuck and kept the car running to be warm, and they died of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's a very serious problem. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of just being prepared in your car, you mentioned certainly the kitty litter, which is a great trick, by the way. It really does work. I've seen it actually work when your tires have carved out a perfect little circular ice channel down there, and that tire's not gripping a hold of anything, but you can dump some things like kitty litter down in there, and yeah, the tire will grip. It's really pretty remarkable. What about things like, blankets, food, water, stuff like this? Is it advisable to sort of stock your car like it was a larder waiting a famine? To a certain extent, yes. Again, calling on my background from living in Alaska, you never leave the house. And here in Texas, we get spoiled because, I'm just put on my flip-flops, I'm just running up to the store or whatever. But in Alaska, you never get in a car unless you're dressed to where you could stand on the side of the road for a significant amount of time. You always are prepared to be in the cold. And when we have these cold snaps like this, it's important to remember that. You need to be ready to be stranded because it could happen. Yeah, it absolutely can happen, and I've been fortunate that it's not happened to me. But I know that sooner or later that's a possibility that we just have to look into. What about having your route planned out? I mean, of course, these days people have GPS and things like this, but should you be thinking about possible places that you can stay, this sort of thing? Granted, motels near a highway may fill up rapidly, but are there ways around that in this day and age? Of course, you can sit in your car and you can book a reservation. So I'm just wondering what tips you have in regard to alternate places to stay besides your car.
With all the technology we have available to us today, there's very little excuse to put yourself in a situation where you would be unsafe. For instance, here in Texas, the Texas Department of Transportation has on all the highways, is it closed? Are there major delays? Are there wrecks? You can look in advance and you can know, oh, wait, I probably should stay where I am, or I don't think I'm going to get that far tonight. I'm only going to make it this far. And you can get on your phone or your tablet or your wireless internet. There's so many resources available to you that advanced planning, just like we were talking about when we were talking about airlines. You need to have the information. You have to keep yourself safe.
Obviously, another thing, of course, you've always got a cell phone, which is a handy thing to have. Of course, unless you keep the car running, and we talked about that already, it's difficult to have any way to charge. So you've got to be careful of what you use that cell phone for. Any tips on priorities of that dwindling little battery?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and this is one of the things that I'm a little feel strongly about is my cell phone battery, even just in my day-to-day life. So for one thing, the case that I have my iPhone in is an external battery, so I've got extra charge there. And then I have 4 additional external batteries, and you better believe that when this storm came, every one of these 5 batteries is completely charged up. So if the power goes off in my house, or if I were to be on a road trip in conditions like this, I would have all of those with me, and so that I would be able to keep my phone charged up, because it's so important. You've got to be able to call for help, got to be able to see what the conditions are ahead of you. But certainly if you're not like me and have 5 external batteries sitting in your pocket, for one thing, turn the brightness down on your cell phone, because that's a huge drain to your cell phone battery. That'll help it last longer. Also change the settings to where it doesn't vibrate. That takes up a lot of battery strength when you have it on vibrate. So depending on your phone model, you can look at things that conserve battery life, and you definitely want to take those steps if you're going to be in a situation where you're really relying on your phone for your safety.
And finally, knowing, as Kenny Rogers sang, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You have to know, I guess, at what point this trip, however much you've planned on it, just isn't worth it. It's time to bag it and go home. Any thoughts about that perspective? Because I'll tell you, that's one area where I'm the worst. Once I decide to go someplace, and we are, by golly, making it there, no matter what. And
I tend to believe that discretion is the better part of valor. I think that one of my employees today ran one errand. We all worked remotely today. Our lobby was closed, but we were all working from home. We made arrangements to be able to do that, and she ran out for one errand, and I was on pins and needles until she got back. And I've done that before on airline trips, too. You get to the airport, there's some major weather event, and there's all kinds of backups. And you know what, I'll just take the refund. Know where I need to be is that important. I mean, unless you're getting somewhere for a sick relative or something of that nature, then, yes, you definitely have to carry on. But I think you really need to evaluate how important that is, and if there is a possibility that you could go the next weekend or next month.
Are there places in the country that don't have many problems like this at all? I mean, it seems like everybody's got something, mudslides or fires or hurricanes or tornadoes or ice and snow. Are there any parts of the country where you can just simply say, stuff like this never happens?
Yeah, Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. Well, let's all move to Phoenix tomorrow, I guess. Any other tips that I haven't brought up that you think people should know about regarding travel in bad weather? Definitely planning ahead is a big player. I keep talking about the cell phone. Make use of your information. Just have really good judgment. And the other thing is, whether you're talking in an airport or you're talking in a plane or a car, just be nice. Everyone in these situations, everybody's having a hard time. And like we said before, everyone's just trying to get through the day.
just be that nice person. Be someone that makes the situation better instead of makes the situation worse. I know at DFW right now, I was reading that they've got entertainment out there at the airport right now, and there's cots all over the place, and the concessionaires are staying open all night, and it's just a tough situation. So just be that nice person.
Yeah, that is an important factor. Goodness knows, and I saw that one year I was stuck at National Airport in Washington for an entire day. In fact, we actually went to a nearby hotel, came back, tried again. Nope, that wasn't gonna happen. And through it all, I would say most people were pretty good, but there were some notable and memorable exceptions. And, of course, it doesn't take too many to kind of ruin it for everybody. So, again, thanks to our guest, Cathi Banks, Vice President of the firm LegacyTravel.com. And she serves as a professional consultant in custom European travel planning as well. So hang in there, folks, and be careful out there. If you're out in that weather, remember, it can kill. So you have to take some serious precautions.